All right. Welcome back, Matt. I know we're in the same clothes.
Yes, we are.
We're publishing these on
Round
different
3.
weeks. It looks like we wear the same thing all the time. We don't.
All the
Recording
time.
this in one fell swoop. In future episodes, I really want to dig deep into customer acquisition cost and KPIs and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're going to do that in upcoming episodes. Today, I wanted to talk to you about something that you guys were very heavily involved with back at Killingsworth. And I thought it was very interesting. And that was effectively storytelling in your business. You have there's books out like Story Brand, and everyone's like telling stories for business, so on and so forth. But I thought what you guys were doing over at Killingsworth was super cool until the Swedes put the kibosh on it.
They gave that thing the judo chop.
That's right. So let's talk about that, what you guys were doing and how folks might want to think about storytelling in their own business.
Yes. So I can't take credit for the direction that we took it in before we sold the company. I think actually the idea came from, it was like a brainchild between our then president at the time, or maybe he was vice president, Frank, and my dad. Just kind of throwing around ideas. Before I had gotten there, Killingsworth was they were doing a great job at advertising. They were not doing a great job at telling a particular story, right? We were branding, we were in billboards, radio, television, mixed media, yellow pages, you know that. So we were spread wide, and that's great. Our message was everywhere, but we were not necessarily telling a story yet. So the idea came up. Obviously, my brother and I were not going to start jumping in and telling these stories ourselves because we were, played different roles in the company. But the idea came up in talking to the Charlotte public about our dad's relationship to his grandkids, right? At the time, he had 4. He had Elliot, he had Leona, he had Drew, and he had Aiden. Aiden was just born, I think, when we got started with the project. But the idea, I can say this pretty confidently. Sometimes getting dad to sign off on an idea was a task in and of itself. Okay. Bull in a china shop is an understatement. Okay. When he was fixated on something, that's all he thought about, man. And it took all of your energy to move him in a helpful direction. So I think we took this idea and we brought it down to how can we do some passive marketing to the Charlotte market? How can we talk about things, but not make it seem like you'll know what I'm talking about. Those commercials with a husband-wife or mother-daughter duo at a car lot. Do you know what I mean? Where they're just standing side by side and they're going through the robot motions and saying just dumb shit that nobody cares about. How can we do that? So we started to think about Killingsworth as a concept. What kind of values do we have as a company, and how can we demonstrate those to the public in a way that's not trying to sell them something directly, right? One of the things that we did was talking about being on time, right? And I think in the commercial that we cut, my son was playing with some cars, right, on a table. They were branded. And my son was really little. He's so cute. But dad comes in and he sits down to play cars with him. And Elliot lifted the cars up to him and he said, "Which one of these cars is the fastest?" And my dad's response was, well, because they were branded, our cars aren't necessarily fast. They're just always on time. And that kind of led into the segue of, we don't do these windows of time. We're always going to be there right when we say, blah, 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 call us for your blah, 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 right? And we kind of we took ideas like that and we started telling more of them. This was successful. People, you could see the playtime, especially through mixed media. How long did somebody stay connected to the commercial? They were well done to begin with. I mean, we weren't cutting corners on the cost for sure, but people were watching them almost all the way through to the end, and we're like, shit. People are like watching this. What do we do next? Right? And so that's kind of how it went. We just kept thinking of things that were important to us and how we were going to talk about these important things to the public. And that's what we were doing before we sold to anticimex. Do you remember the most notable one that we did?
There was the one with the cape.
Nope. That was great. That was a great one. Killingsworth was doing a lot of services at the time. And so we were pitching the idea that we were like a superhero to our homeowners, right? And so my son was getting dressed up in his cape and he was going to be the Killingsworth man. And Dad was tying the cape around his neck and putting his bandana on and spinning him around the yard. That was great. But the most effective one that we ever did was my daughter's first and only one, where she painted my dad's fingernails. Do you remember?
I do remember this. Yes, I remember this. Yes.
That was a great.
Let's talk about that.
It was great.
How'd that come about?
It was so Dad really was excited. He was getting kind of addicted to people walking up to him in public and asking him things like, "Is that really your grandson?" People were literally stopping him at the grocery store because his voice had an impact in our market at the time. Everybody knew his voice. People knew who
he was on the radio too, if I remember.
Constantly.
Yep.
And so people were stopping him all the time, friends and random people. Is that really your grandson? And he'd be like, "Yeah, that's my grandson." And so he got really excited about the prospect of doing this with Leona because, I mean, there's a part of Dad that is sentimental generally, but there's also a part of him that saw dollar signs in taking this, talking about his relationship, the awe factor that a woman is going to have, who is our target. That a woman was going to have with a grandpa sitting down with his granddaughter as she paints his fingernails. So she's painting his fingernails green. And the way that the commercial goes is, Dad's sitting up there with his fingers up high, looking at his fingernails. And she asks him if he would like a cup of tea while he waited for his nails to dry. And Dad's response, because we're talking about customer service and how important that is. And he goes, "That's great customer service." And then the conversation, continues. And then at the end, by virtue of storytelling, Dad addresses the camera. He's got my daughter sitting on his lap. He addresses the camera and he says, "I'm going to have my granddaughter here give me a full makeover. You can head over to thebigreenk.com to check it out." And man, I mean, she was so tiny. He looked like a lady of the night from the 80s. It looked like it was bad. It was like yellow eyeshadow, bright pink lips, hair rollers. Like it was scary. Do you remember Silence of the Lambs?
Oh, of course I do. Yeah.
Like rubs the lotion on his skin.
Starling.
That lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
He kind of had that vibe. Yeah. He definitely had that vibe.
We're gonna have Dylan
right?
spin this up.
Dylan, I'm going to send you the picture. He's got his hands. He's doing what is that? Glamour shots, right? At the end, we had him doing like glamour shots with his makeover, like hands on her shoulder and all this kind of stuff. He just dove in, and we loaded this. We got this out into the market. We got it on YouTube. We got it on broadcast TV. We published it. We bought one of the spots before. This is the year that the Panthers went to the Super Bowl when they were good. Tepper, I hope you're watching. You're not watching my video, but you should be watching. The Panthers went to the Super Bowl that year, and we had a commercial play in the third quarter, right? It was an expensive commercial, but it was getting people to go to the website to see Dad's makeover. And our website traffic was insane. I'm pretty sure at one point that night, our website stopped working. There's something to that. When the lightning strikes and you're telling your story and it's compelling and it resonates with people, you'll see business improve. We grew like crazy. We grew from 8 million to 24 million on the back of this idea, right? That's not hyperbolic and sentimental. That's money, right? That's money on the table.
Yeah.
And so I don't recommend people leverage their families in that way, but figure out what story you're telling and own it. Like just go in hard,
So you guys were obviously, you're on the radio, you guys were doing the TV spots. Not everyone's going to be able to do that.
No.
So how can you take the concepts that you guys did at Killingsworth and do it on like a smaller scale? I mean, I guess you could do it on YouTube, right? You can do it on your website.
You can still do it. You can do it with your iPhone, man. You can tell a compelling story, or pick up a trend that's going on TikTok, or there was this one company I started following actually recently. And while this guy's doing his work, he whispers dad jokes into his iPhone. Okay. Has nothing to do with the service that he provides. I guarantee you this man is making money hand over fist because the amount of followers that he has on his TikTok channel is bananas. So he's doing his service and he's whispering and giving the dramatic pause and all the stuff, whispering these stupid dad jokes that get me to barrel laugh every single time. You can do stuff like that. You don't have to have like a Super Bowl ad, but you can still take what you're doing, make it personal, interesting, or funny, or relevant to somebody who is out there consuming, because that's what people are doing, and have a big impact. If you're not doing this, I would argue, if you're not telling your story, if you're not investing time here, you are missing out, and you're way behind the people that are. I mean, the chasm between people that are taking this act seriously and not is wide, very wide. I've talked to companies that have been the same size for several years. Can you imagine my father having a company being the same size for several years? I mean, he would have decapitated our shit, right? So, so
Yeah.
definitely not to be neglected.
There wouldn't have been enough medicine for him.
Nope, there sure wouldn't have. Heart attack, stroke, all those things would have happened all at once, and we would all be dead. Everybody would be dead. The company would be no more. So yeah, you can do it on the cheap. Just do it. Have fun with it and do it.
So Matt, when you guys were running Killingsworth, you were doing these TV spots, you were on the radio, you were doing stuff on the web, and it was entirely generated effectively by the Rogers family and team and Grandkids largely. But then in 2018, anticimex acquired Killingsworth, and now it was a small part of a massive global corporate, and that changed a lot of things. So how did that storytelling change post-acquisition?
Well, so while I was still the VP over there, we had to take this storytelling thing that we were doing as a family that was very effective, right? $8 to $24 million. That's a big jump in a short amount of time, right? Mm-hmm. And then I had to figure out how to make it work without my family, because it was very clear that anticimex was at least encouraging us to be more agnostic, right? Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't use the sentimental method of storytelling anymore. And I had to think bigger than our region, because anticimex is big about mergers and acquisitions, right? If they moved into South Carolina, the same message needed to work, right? If they moved into Georgia, same message needed to work, right? And so we put down the sentimental storytelling. We started to tell funnier stories. I think it's weird. The guy that we chose is a friend of mine. And people were saying, he looks an awful lot like your dad. I didn't think so at all until people started to say that. But they did. We went like full on, Ron Burgundy, campy, funny, weird, commercials. And it worked just as well too. And it was more agnostic, right? We lost that personal touch when we tried to zoom out a little bit and get bigger, much bigger, right? But that was the strategy that we had to change. Let's put down the sentimental piece. Let's think about ways that we can be funny, still tell a story, still passively market. I don't want to be like, hey guys, call now to get your blah, 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 right? But still resonate in the mind of the consumer. Because we've talked about this before. A consumer or anybody in general needs to review something akin to 27 times for 73% retention, right? How do we get that next time that we pass in front of that consumer to stick into their psyche, so that when they're ready to look for a service, they think of you, right? So that was the pivot that we made from so you can do it from your phone, you can do it with your family, right? And tell stories of your family and sentimental stories, but then you can also do it at a much more corporate level and tell good stories at that level too. Just because you're corporate, I guess the moral of the story is there, because I see a lot of the big players out there getting so generic with their messaging, right? You don't have to be generic with your messaging. You can still create fun, compelling, interesting things that resonate. Outside of the service industry, do you remember the commercials for Purple Mattress? No, you've never.
No.
I'm going to send you one when we get off this phone. The video, it's Purple Mattress. How big is Purple Mattress? Okay. It's a Sasquatch, this Sasquatch wearing an apron, and she's beating a fish on a rock and talking to the camera about Purple Mattress, right? You can tell a story that is out of the box. Is definitely going to resonate with the consumer without looking like the most basic generic Joe out there,
All this talk about the brand here in Killingsworth, it made me think about the fact that the original colors were that super loud, like hot pink and green. And I do remember Mike Rogers, your father, he was colorblind, or he is colorblind, I should say. Did he come up with those colors? Or
he did, man.
Who chose those?
He always picked things that were contrasting to him. And it wouldn't matter if it was ugly to any of the rest of us, because he couldn't see it anyway. and because he's so damn headstrong, we could have said it all day long until we were exhausted, till our lips were parched and our voice had given out. And he would have, I don't care, this is what I picked, right? And so he did pick those colors, and I slowly changed those colors over time because I was so embarrassed by them.
I remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember getting a call like while you were VP of marketing over there and your father was no longer involved in the business,
Yep.
how dismayed he was that his own flesh and blood would dare
I betrayed him, man.
to trample
The moment
on
I
this.
had the opportunity to update us, because dad's a very traditional person, so he wasn't going to change anything like that, your branding messages very
Yep.
quickly. But the moment I had the opportunity, man, I took it, and boy, was he paying attention when I did that. My God, that was a week's worth of phone calls. What a shitty looking blah blah blah. You know,
Yeah,
this is
I
terrible.
remember. Now,
I'm glad he deflected to you a couple times.
correct me if I'm wrong. I do see some resemblance in lizard's colors.
Get out.
Do I not? Like,
Maybe it's Freudian.
I mean, I see the green, I see the pink. I mean, there's something there, man. You haven't been able to escape it.
All right, here's the thing. I'm a child of the 80s. You're right. Okay. There is a parallel. There's got to be something there, some Freudian connection between where I came from and where I'm going. And I honestly, I'm okay with it, because here's why. I lean mostly on the pink, because I'm a child of the 80s and day glow is a big part of my youth.
Yeah.
And if anything is going to pop out, especially in marketing for home services, which, I mean, you just go to any of these conferences that we're going to, and man, do they look generic. I mean, red, green, or blue. Do you know what I mean? And so, I definitely went with something that's going to slap the viewer around a little bit. That's for sure. I'd like to think I'm leaning more towards, day glow pink than magenta, straight up magenta, which is what, Killingsworth was. But there definitely is some green in there too. So I won't deny it. There is a commonality between where I came from and where I'm going. But I guess that's part of storytelling.
Well, we're getting deep into this now, but on a future episode, I do want to talk to you about the color palette and like what that means in business, because colors represent different things. And I think that's an important part of the brand image.
Absolutely.
So on a future discussion, we shall chat about that.
I love it.
For now, I appreciate you spending some time with me, Matt. This has been great.
Oh yeah, we should change clothes for the next one, I think.
Next time we will.